critical day to our viewers. Welcome to,
Or rather, welcome back to Philocast.
today we are to bring to you such critical philosophy in a form of a vlogcast.
But first, I am Karil Bridget Gaviola Orca, your charming ecologista from Group 3.
And I am Juan Gabriel Guevara or Gabe, your bubbly ecologista, also from Group 3.
So now that we have introduced ourselves, how about a few personal insights about the reading that was assigned to us?
Friedrich Nietzsche's.
Beyond Good and Evil.
Okay, honestly, my first impression of the reading assigned to us is that it is genuinely seeming as if I was reading a Bible in the New King James Version.
Girl, I agree. Because it really did have a lot of unfamiliar terms. But hey viewers, don't you fret because we are to do our best to simplify these things for you as much as possible. But Gabe, can I commend you your comparison of the reading to a Bible?
Duh, it was intentional, especially since Friedrich Nietzsche indeed had a lot to say about religion. And before I intentionally spill some tea here, let us now roll onto this controversial Philocast episode 2.
So, who is Friedrich Nietzsche? It's quite an interesting question, isn't it, Gabe?
It actually is, especially since we are to once again delve into the life and beliefs of another philosopher.
Exactly. Friedrich Nietzsche is such an intriguing character given his background. So let's get into it, shall we?
Absolutely. Nietzsche was born in 1844 in Rockham, Germany, and he came from a puritanical and religious family.
Plus, his father, Karl Ludwig Nietzsche, was a Lutheran minister. So, I can't imagine the clash of ideas within those walls, given that Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, had a lot to say about morality and religion.
Also, he became famous for his criticisms about religion, particularly Christianity and traditional morality. So, can you tell us more about his academic journey?
Well, he initially enrolled at the University of Bonn to study theology and classical philology. I am giving emphasis that it is philology and not philosophy. Philology is a combination of literature, linguistics, and history. Although the catch is he only lasted for 2 semesters at Bonn and then he transferred to the University of Leipzig.
In the later years, he eventually became a professor of philology at the University of Basel.
And some of his important works are Thus Spake Zarathustra, and of course our topic for today, Beyond Good and Evil, The Genealogy of Morals, The Antichrist, and The Will to Power.
To mention, there are also quite a lot of famous people from different industries whom Friedrich influenced, such as Thomas Mann, Hermann Hesse, Karl Jaspers, the famous Martin Heidegger, Sigmund Freud, and Jean Paul Sartre. Can I also say that The Antichrist from the name itself is actually intriguing?
I can definitely agree with you, Gabe, especially since Friedrich is from a religious family, yet he has a book about Antichrist. However, that works for another time. Today, we are to focus our attention on this book entitled Beyond Good and Evil.
Beyond Good and Evil. Ooh, I'm pretty sure this is quite not disappointing to our viewers today, as his claims are very logical to what we can observe in our society nowadays.
That is actually real. So let's begin with his criticisms on morality. He really had a lot to say with this, but for starters, let's talk about how he called moral philosophy and virtue as tedious and soporific.
And for the knowledge of our viewers, tedious is synonymous to boring and soporific means sleep-inducing. And defining those two words is actually the best way to start this off, isn't it, Ka?
Yes, because from there, we can actually have a glimpse on what Nietzsche had to say about morality.
And just to put it out there, despite all the strong criticisms and opinions from Nietzsche, he never denied the fact that both still serve their own purpose.
At this point, let's debrief the reading quote by quote for easier understanding. Firstly, he stated, it is desirable that as few people as possible should reflect upon morals.
Which reminds me of a present time term called romanticize. It was as if Nietzsche was telling us to not romanticize morals, as he was trying to imply how morals can actually place a person in a dangerous, captious, and ensnaring situation.
Next, a question he also posed is more sorry, is moralizing immoral? And for Nietzsche, the fact that the essence of morality, where a person must reflect first and think hard before deciding upon something, makes morality immoral.
He also points out that thinking hard about something means that it does not come out naturally and can somehow be biased on the situation.
And moving on, morality, according to Nietzsche, is just culturally constructed, which makes sense because it is the culture or the society who dictates what is good or what is evil.
To add, moral values are different from person to person. Example, what may be true to Ka may be false for me, and it goes vice versa.
And what you have just said leads us to how he invalidated the belief that there is an authoritative morality.
I mean, if we introspect about it, we really do have different values and opinions in life, right? So, why should we bother to establish a superior morality?
That's exactly what Nietzsche said. He regarded morality as English morality in the reading, plus how it was said that establishing their morality as the superior morality would benefit the greater number.
He justified it by explicating how the universal requirement of one morality is detrimental or unfair to the higher men.
And now that you have mentioned higher men, I can recall how controversial this part gets, where he constantly mentions a caste or a hierarchy among people.
I actually agreed to you with the controversial part. For context for our viewers, Nietzsche values a certain pathos of distance.
Where he attached classification upon nobility rather, and lowness.
That's why those in the noble or barbarian caste, or the so-called Englishmen, are looked upon as the higher and complete men.
And as controversial as it already is, Nietzsche even defined the noble ones as someone who has a strong desire for power and is superior to those who are moral and peaceful.
Those being regarded as moral and peaceful are those in the lower part of the hierarchy. I quote from Nietzsche, there is a distinction of rank between man and consequently between morality and morality.
And here's another controversial line. To refrain mutually from injury, from violence, from exploitation, and put one's will on a par with that of others is the will to denial of life.
For Nietzsche, why must we bother to make everything equal when the will of life is to be a conquest for the weak?
Just like how exploitation is a primary organic function of life, and that we, the people, must crave for power.
He also distinguished good and bad, synonymous to noble and despicable.
And good and evil as something of a different origin.
Another criticism of his was how moral value was first handedly about men itself, and then later on it was about their actions.
Which brings us to his realization of a distinction between two primary types of morality, which is the master morality and the slave morality.
On Nietzsche's two primary types of morality, let's start off with the master morality.
But first, just a disclaimer to our viewers, we are in no way, shape, or form agreeing to the things that we are about to say.
Thank you for putting that out there, Ka, and exactly what she said. So, especially since Nietzsche was quite keen in attaching offensive labels to the minority, so that's just some clarification with our stance, isn't it, Ka?
Yes, it is, Gabe. And now let's move on. What is Nietzsche's master morality?
To simply put, this morality states that they are the superior beings who are to never be wrong.
As nobles, all their values are to be automatically considered as correct or just.
These matters help the unfortunate or the slaves for the sake of empowering themselves. In short, they are not made for sympathy.
All honor, belief, and prejudice are in their favor. Hence, leaving the slaves any other option but to be submissive.
They're such privileged people, so out of touch with reality, aren't they?
They really are, Gabe. Imagine what is good and bad for them are weighed by its benefits and consequences. Good being the beneficial and bad being those that will result in consequences.
Our viewers must be thinking, what about those who do not count as noble as per Nietzsche's wordings?
So those who are not counted in the master morality fall under the slave morality.
They are regarded as the polar opposite of the nobles, as they are cowardly, timid, and insignificant, and are heavily despised due to their narrow morality.
Which is why the slave morality is also known as the morality of utility, where they strive to be at par with the powerful ones.
However, they do not have the means to be powerful in layman's term. As a coping mechanism to this, they turn around the values of the noble ones.
An example would be how slaves want wealth, but since they cannot achieve it, they regard wealth as greed, which demonstrates bitterness.
Nietzsche's take on this? Opposition. He believes and encourages that we must be honest to ourselves and strive hard for what we want.
Those with a slave morality obtain honor by having lots of good traits such as sympathy, being kind, being the helping hand, having a warm heart, patience, diligence, humility, and even friendliness.
They are the good man who are easily deceived by the evil man.
And since it is in their nature to be easily deceived, it brings further questioning to the definition of good and stupid.
Moving on, let's talk about Nietzsche's argument that no one is responsible for the fact that he exists at all, that he is constituted as he is, and that he happens to be in a certain circumstances in a particular environment. Here to expound on this, Kat?
So, what Nietzsche is actually trying to say here is that there is no other entity nor a higher being that is responsible for our existence and our purpose in life because we, human beings, are the ones who made up the concept of purpose.
And in line with what you said, there will never be an attempt at attaining the ideal man, ideal happiness, or ideal morality because it is absurd for an individual to career towards a certain purpose when in fact we are the ones who invented the concept of purpose, making its reality actually lacking.
That is right. And this purpose is part of our humanity as a whole. Thus, according to Nietzsche, no one and nothing can judge, measure, compare, and condemn one's existence because then they are judging, measuring, comparing, and condemning the entirety of humanity.
And so this corresponds to what Nietzsche stated that when we deny God, we deny the responsibility in God, thus alone we save the world.
This just means that by denying God, only do we save the world because according to Nietzsche, Christianity limits humanity of its innate purpose by teaching people that they should strive for a specific goal, and that is to being an ideal man.
As we can see, without a doubt, Nietzsche really criticizes Christianity's idea of morality or the concept of Christianity in general.
That is right, Gabe. Just like what he said, Christianity is the most fatal and seductive lie that has ever yet existed. I urge people to declare an open war with it.
Because for Nietzsche, every branch of Christianity's ideal is a form of disguise that he won't ever enter into compromise in. Thus, he tells people to declare an open war with it.
In his book, he provided several reasons on why he asserts this argument, and even urges people to go against Christianity's ideals and beliefs.
First off, Nietzsche believed that the most abhorrent or extremely distasteful or unacceptable type of degeneracy that civilizations ever brought into existence is using slave morality as a measure of all things.
Nietzsche argued that slave morality is promoted by Christianity, and in this way, it degrades the essence of humanity by limiting people to a certain ideal in life, which are all under the name of God.
In short, the morality or paltry people that Nietzsche is describing here is Christianity.
And moving on with the discussion of the New Testament and the little bigots, a bigot for the viewer's reference is a person who is unreasonably attached to a belief, opinion, or faction, especially one that is prejudiced against toward a person or people on the basis of their membership.
According to Nietzsche, when someone touches or reads the New Testament, one cannot help but to experience a sort of inexpressible feeling of discomfort.
He also adds that the least qualified people, or those people that he likes to call as little bigots, are the ones who have a lot of say in regards to the greatest problems of existence in the New Testament, as if they themselves are not problems at all.
Nietzsche also liked to describe Christians as little lying abortions of bigotry because, as he explained, Christians believe that other people who does not have the same ideals as them are considered as lower or inferior.
Somehow, Nietzsche argues that Christians develop a sense of superiority complex, and he even explained the cause of it. And he even called it as the most fatal form of insanity that has ever existed on earth.
This most fatal form of insanity that Ka is describing was when Christians began laying claim to certain terms such as God, truth, love, last judgment, Holy Spirit, and many more, thereby setting and separating themselves from the rest of the world as if they are the sense, standard, or measure of all things.
While Nietzsche, being the sarcastic philosopher that he is, even stated that someone should build a lunatic asylum for these Christians for their foolishness.
Actually, he even said that Christians should not be persecuted for it because then it is the way of taking them too seriously as if they were actually people deserving to be serious about.
That is right, Gabe. Moving on to the next argument of Nietzsche, it focuses on Christianity taking away our natural morality as a humanity.
The law, which are the literal laws that we have in our state, is the fundamental realistic formula of certain self-preservative measures of a community, which forbids actions that have a definite tendency to harm or jeopardize the welfare of the community.
According to Nietzsche, although these laws prevent human beings from doing such evil acts, the law does not forbid nor prevent the mind, our minds, from thinking to act upon these certain forbidden acts.
Thus, Christians argue that religion is the one responsible for preventing and regulating the mind from thinking to do evil acts.
But as Nietzsche likes to see it, this removes the essence of humanity because we tend to follow a certain ideal provided by a religion.
Just like how he stated that when God is introduced everywhere, the utility is withdrawn, the nature of origin of morality is denied everywhere.
In short, the introduction of God to humans destroys natural morality. For example, when in Christianity they say, love your enemy, it removes nature's morality that says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
Nietzsche questions how come Christians are not disgusted with the emasculate ideal of man, just as how they are disgusted at the thought of a eunuch.
When we talk about the emasculate ideal of man, we are talking about stripping off or removing a man's identity, role, or essence. On the other hand, a eunuch is a man who has been castrated.
Basically, Nietzsche is questioning how Christians are not bothered that Christianity is stripping off something from humanity, yet they are bothered with the eunuch, which is not even that deep.
And according to him, Christianity uses a seductive charm through the use of alluring words to attract men to make them believe that they will become a better person through religion and that they will be rewarded for this.
That is why even if Christianity offers something disgusting and degenerating for humanity, it still manages to allure people because of its goodness and purity.
So since Nietzsche urged people to declare an open war with Christianity, and people can't really use physical violence to do it, Nietzsche proposed a spiritual war along with its recipe or steps. It's very much creative.
So for the first recipe as per Nietzsche, ingredient or step or starting a spiritual war, one has to make a new ideal and should therefore deny other ideals and declare it to be the reverse of all ideals.
Nietzsche even said that slander should be carried out to the other ideals so that these ideals will have the reputation of being evil.
The second recipe is once this ideal has been set as the general standard of all things, one must project this into all things, behind all things, and behind the destiny of all things as God.
Basically, you are going to name this ideal under a god because people are more likely to believe in an ideal when a higher being is involved, such as a god.
The third recipe is very simple to understand. Those who opposes this ideal that you have created are considered to be opponents of God, and that people have a certain choice to either be the good person or the bad person by choosing what ideal to follow.
Moving on to the fourth recipe, Nietzsche states that all forms of suffering, gruesome, and terrible things are declared to be the results of opposition to one's ideal.
But there is an exception to that recipe, which is the fifth one, which states that nature is the reverse of one's ideal, and your sufferings is just a natural condition in which it is a trial of patience given by God.
For the fourth and fifth recipes, they imply that for evil people, these sufferings happening to them are punishments, while for the good people, these sufferings are just trials that will benefit them because it will bear something good in the future.
Which leads us to our sixth and final recipe for a spiritual war, which states that all triumph of anti-naturalism and ideal castration, the triumph of world of pure, good, sinless, and blessed shall be projected as the final goal of all, the finale, the great hope, or the coming of the kingdom of God.
Basically, this is saying that all kinds of suffering will be worth it in the end because we will be welcomed by God's kingdom, and that alone is our final goal, our exact purpose in life.
So that is all for Nietzsche's recipe of a spiritual war and going against Christianity's ideals.
Moving on to the result of moral idiosyncrasy, Nietzsche questioned to what extent psychologists and philosophers have been corrupted by moral idiosyncrasy, which is the idea that Christian morality is the standard.
No one had the courage to advance the theory of non-free will.
No one had the courage to identify the typical feature of happiness with the will to power.
And no one had the courage to regard virtue as a result of immorality.
Because all of these are against the ideal morality taught by Christianity.
And we should take note that people develop a belief or tendency that one should not oppose Christian morality.
And I think that ends our discussion about Friedrich Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. But before we end this vlogcast, let's do a quick recap.
That was so quick. Anyway, Nietzsche had a lot to say about morality and religion, particularly Christianity. In fact, he was so savage in breaking free from the norms.
He even distinguished two sensical types of morality, which is the master morality and the slave morality.
To think that Beyond Good and Evil was published during 1886, yet what he stated in this book still has relevance during the present times.
Exactly, Gabe. Regardless of the multiple attempts to overthrow such social stratification among the different classes continue to prevail.
It is the apparent inequality among the classes that we abhor, questioning how the rich people continue to climb the social ladder and end up rising to the top.
However, the poor, regardless of their efforts to make ends meet, at the end of the day, they may remain stagnant in the ladder.
We can also somehow relate Nietzsche's philosophy on morality to Charles Darwin's survival of fittest, where the strong continue to thrive while the weak are expected to perish.
And with everything that Nietzsche said in Beyond Good and Evil, something I believe that most of us, including the viewers, would agree is how there is no such thing as superior morality.
Exactly. Each and everyone's moralities will always be true to their own virtues, so why should we bother to dictate and disrupt honesty among them?
We should take note too on how Nietzsche greatly despised the ideals of Christianity, and he even described Christians as foolish people or even bigots.
And although he really made a point with this argument, it does not entirely mean that we should too despise Christianity the way he did, but we should be in critical discussions of topics like this.
Just like how notable Nietzsche is by even providing a so-called recipe for a spiritual war, it does not mean that we should act upon it, but rather Nietzsche's philosophy can give us a different perspective on religion and morality.
That is right, Ka. And we must remember that at the end of the day, we are all different human beings who think, and thus we have different ideals on what we believe is good and evil.
And before we end, we would like to give you, our viewers, a question to ponder on. Where do you think we should draw the line between humanity, morality, and Christianity? So, once again, I am your real Bridget Caviola Urca, your charming escologista from Group 3.
And I am one Gabriel Guevara, or Gabe, your bubbly escologista, also from Group 3. And once again, this has been Philocast,
where we shed the light of knowledge of philosophy in a vlogcast.
See you in our next episode, listeners!
Bye!